Hi everybody, this is going to be the kind of quick and dirty version of the AMCAS introduction workshop that I did. I'm trying it in a new format. Instead of the YouTube video, I'm going to try this PowerPoint recording so that you can navigate between the slides and get to what you need and what is important to you a little bit easier. So feedback on it will be appreciated when you're done. This is again going to be the AMCAS introduction. In this presentation, I'm going to be going through the predominantly factors of the AMCAS application for 2018, although I will try to make a note of some of the similarities, which are plentiful between AMCAS and ADSAS and CASPA. Remember that every different health profession has its own different common app. I'm going to talk about how it works. I'm going to go through some of the timetables for the dates and participation. We're going to go through each section of the AMCAS with a few more details. We're going to talk about what happens after submission, what the verification process and timetables look like, what things you can go back and change once you have clicked submit, criminal background checks, multiple accept data, and then I'm going to give you some additional resources, including the fee assistance program. Now, most of you have some familiarity with what AMCAS represents because you all went through the Common App when you applied to college. It's a nonprofit centralized application service. It collects applicant information, transcripts, and letters of recommendation. It verifies line by line all of your academic records, and it provides a standardized grading information to participating schools. Now, standardized means that the GPA you have on your UNC transcript might differ from what AMCAS verifies it as, but we will talk about that in a little more detail. Almost all of the U.S. participating MD programs participate in AMCAS as their primary application method, and here is the website. So remember that none of these timetables actually matter until you click submit. So you can log into your AMCAS, you can fill out your AMCAS, you can have everything ready to go, but until you click that submit button, you're not on anybody's radar. So if you're wanting everything done in anticipation of when your MCAT scores are received, that's fine. No one will know if you fill out everything, don't score where you want, or don't get the summer opportunity you want, or just feel a little overwhelmed and think a gap year might work better or an additional year might work better. No one will know that you filled everything out if you don't click submit, but once you do, you're live for the 2018 application. So you pay the fees and you submit your application. They go for a line-by-line official transcript verification. They calculate your GPAs and verify your coursework, and then it is made available to the schools which you designate. There is an initial batch, and then after that, as they are completed, they are then distributed. Here's what the homepage looks or looked like when I got this presentation together. They still hadn't updated it. So this or something similar is what the login page is going to look like. These are the dates you're going to want to be cognizant of. Now, remember from your conversations with me, I'm very clear on saying around the first week of May or around the first week of June, because I don't want people to get so hung up on a date that they feel like they have to be the very first one in. This is not a Black Friday sale. As long as you are relatively early, you will still be considered within the first wave of applications, because even though it goes live during June, when you click submit, the processing still has to happen, which can take anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6 weeks at a really bad processing or a really intense processing time. So even those that click submit on June 2nd may still be included in the same set of applications that are received on June 30th, because June 30th is the absolute soonest that any medical schools are going to see completed processed AMCAS files. Now, a little note about the early decision deadline for August 1. UNC does not have an early decision program. I know there's a document circulating somewhere online that Bashford had in a memo from the early 2000s, and I know the internet never forgets, but trust me, UNC does not have an EDP program. Early decision programs are typically for state programs, only for those state residents. And if you apply EDP, you are solely applying to that school. If you are from a state that has an EDP program, I would suggest you contact me so we can talk about your tactics on that and if it might be a good decision for you. September and December are when deadlines start happening. But remember, if you're waiting for the deadline, you're already late. As I said, this is the tentative participation. I don't expect it to change though. At last count, all MD schools in the United States participated in AMCAS, with the exception of Texas public schools. And that is because Texas, everything's bigger in Texas. They have what is called TMDSAS. It is its own Common App specifically for Texas public schools. For the letter service, 144 of AMCAS participating schools participate in the letter service, with the exceptions of Puerto Rico, University of Louisiana Shreveport, Texas Tech, UT Austin, and UT Rio Grande Valley. Those are the only ones that I am aware of that do not participate or that were published at the time of this workshop that did not participate in the letters program. A large majority of the schools, almost all of them, do participate in the criminal background checks, and I do have a slide where I discuss that in a little more detail. Right now, the application processing fee remains unchanged for the 2018 cycle, but the additional school fee has gone up a little bit. So $160 gets you your primary application with one school, and then it's $39 for each additional school. There are 9 parts to the AMCAS application. We will cover all of these in a little more detail, but I will go ahead and tell you the largest portion of your work will actually come from the coursework. So we'll talk about that in plenty of detail. Accessing the application. This is what your account's going to look like when you're wanting to get it set up. However, if you have registered for previously the SMDEP summer program, now SHPEP, or if you have registered for the MCAT, or if you have registered for the fee assistance program, then you already have an AMCAS ID. If so, you should use those same login credentials to log into the AMCAS application. Only create a new account if you have never accessed the AAMC system before. If you have more than one AAMC account in our system, this could appear fraudulent. So please, only one. This is a screenshot of the main menu in the AMCAS application. The page is just a click away from anywhere in the application by clicking the main menu button in the top right. The sections of the application are accessible from both the horizontal bar at the top and the list in the center of the page. You can access the application sections from the top horizontal bar or as they are listed in the center. You can only access certain sections once you have completed others. For example, you cannot complete the coursework section until you have listed your school's attended section. Check the status of your application, letters of evaluation, and transcripts received on the left-hand side of the application by clicking the details link. Print the letter request form and transcript request forms from the screen. We're going to show you what those look like in a second. The sections automatically display complete or incomplete based on whether all the required fields in that section of the application have been filled in. The action buttons on the right become active when certain information has been entered into the application. Your application status is always displayed in the left column, and clicking on the details link will provide more information on that status means, as well as detailing the status of transcripts and letters. The first section of the application is called the identifying information and is composed of much of the information you entered during registration. So some of these fields will be pre-populated. Make sure everything is correct and also include any school issued ID numbers, which will help at AMCAS match your transcripts to your application. This is more identifying information. There is a new section on the AMCAS where you are able to list your gender identity. This is the schools attended section, the second section of the application, where you are required to enter information on any post-secondary institution you have attended, regardless of credit earned or transferred. That means if you registered for a summer semester somewhere and withdrew after the drop period so a W appears on a transcript, you still have to get that transcript. You still have to list that school. Full instructions on which schools you must enter are available by clicking Help at the top of the screen in the application. This is where you will decide whether to release your application information to school designated advisors. That's me. This is an incredibly important section for me. Please remember, I will never have access to your personal statement. I will never have access to your activities sections. I will never have access to your family or biographical information. All this will give me is information on your standardized scores, your standardized GPA, your school selection, and dates of submission. This helps me plan for workshops and assessment needs for all of our students to know where they're going, to track patterns, and to help people build competitive applications. In the schools attended section, you'll also determine which official transcripts are required by AMCAS. You can request exceptions for those that are not required, although this is very rare, and I will talk about that in more detail. A link to a transcript request form, which facilitates proper matching of your transcript to your application, is in this section and can also be found from the main menu of the application. If you participated in a study abroad program, which to AMCAS means that you are sponsored by a domestic institution in the United States and credit has been transferred, then you should carefully read through the sections on study abroad and foreign coursework in the AMCAS instruction manual. You should also watch the tutorial listed on entering study abroad coursework to determine how you should enter this information in your application. The next section, Biographic Information, is pretty self-explanatory, so I'll leave it at that. You're able to list your language proficiency, your languages. You can also list your DACA status and citizenship. There is more information on some of this in the MSAR. There are 2 new questions regarding military service, which helps keep AMC participating schools in line with Section 702, Veterans Access, Choice, and Accountability Act. There is also a new section. You will not be able to self-identify as a first-generation college student, but an indicator that is derived from your response to parental education. If the fields indicate they had no associate's degree or higher, you will then be listed as a first-generation college student. This is the coursework page, the 4th section. It's typically the section that takes the most time to complete. You will see that the schools you entered in section 2 are shown here in the schools attended box, and you will enter information about all the courses you took at this school. Now, AMCAS are pros who do this all day, every day, and I guarantee these tutorials, if you look at them, will work for you. They will help. For each course ever taken at a post-secondary institution, regardless of whether credit was earned, you will fill in information about that course, including academic year and term, the year in school, the course number and name, the grade or symbol on the transcript if applicable, the credit hours shown on the transcript if applicable. You will indicate if there was a lab associated with the course and choose any applicable special course type by using the checkboxes. AMCAS recommends that you request a personal copy of your official transcript from your registrar. The reason being, your Connect Carolina and your Tar Heel tracker are not necessarily going to show the same things that your official transcript comes with. And your official transcript is what AMCAS will be using to do the line-by-line verification. So you want to put in exactly the same thing they're seeing. The only exception to this would be if on your transcript it does not have lecture and lab, you will put lecture and lab if it is a combined one. Biggest examples of this are our physics. It's a 4-hour credit class, but it does have a lab attached, so you're going to write physics and lab. Again, this is just a restatement of what I just said. You must enter everything. Your AP credit and your by-exam credit will be entered into your transcript, but they will not affect your GPA. They are only hours. I have a whole section that I'm going to cover in half a second on study abroad. You have to list all withdrawals, you have to list incompletes, and whether or not you retook a class, you have to put them both. You have to put every instance because medical schools will see it. You need to be very careful how you put these in. It's not the end of the world if you make a mistake, but if you have I think it's 10. If you make 10 omissions or mistakes, then they will send it back to you for corrections, and then you go back to the processing line. So it can cause a huge delay in your application. When in doubt, put it exactly how it appears on the transcript. You must assign each course a course classification. So you have the BCPM, but you can also designate things as fine arts, you can designate them as philosophy, you can designate them as social sciences. Course classifications are used in the calculation of your AMCAS GPA. That's what I meant when I said some of it might not look the way it does on your transcript from UNC. That is because your transfer credits, even though they do not appear on your UNC transcript as GPA effective, they will be entered into your AMCAS, because remember, you have to get an official transcript from every institution you attended, and the original grade from the credit granting institution is what gets put into AMCAS. So you will essentially be putting in your other coursework and ignoring whatever it transfers in as to UNC. The BCPM is the biology, chemistry, physics, math. There is your cumulative and all others, and then there's the post-bac, and then there's the graduate. Here's exactly what that's going to look like. You're going to have the BCPM, your AO, all others, your total GPA, your total hours, and your cumulative GPA down here at the bottom. Now, a lot of people will ask me, what does my post-bac GPA? Maybe I'm taking some classes post-graduation. Maybe I'm doing a full MS program. Those are where the post-baccalaureate is going to factor in like its own fifth-year line item. And the more hours you have backing up a solid performance, the more and higher impact it can have. The more it means, the more hours you have to back it up. And then the graduate would be if you did a full, say, MS program. Here's an excellent sheet that is on page 40 out of the 90 pages in the 2018 application instruction manual. So you'll notice you have some allied health sciences and you have some social and behavioral sciences, but it says very plainly each course must be assigned a course classification based strictly on the primary content of the course. Now, I have these conversations frequently with my EXSS people and my psychology people. For EXSS, your anatomy and physiology, absolutely. Your biomechanics, that's physics light. We know that. Those are science. Your sports admin, your basic health, those are not. Same with psychology. If it's upper level bio-life sciences, think synapses versus social aspects of behavior, then sure, your biopsych, some of your cognitive psych is going to count for your BCPM, but your 101s, your abnormals, your child dev, no, those won't count. Now, for study abroad, there are a couple of different classifications to keep in mind. On the one end of the spectrum, very, very easy to deal with, are the UNC faculty-led. That's a UNC class that you happen to take at another institution, that you happen to take in another country. It's just a UNC class in a different setting. It shows up on your UNC transcript as a UNC course with a UNC grade. You put it in exactly as it appears. Courses taken at the other end of that spectrum, foreign exchange courses. I went to another country and I took another class, and that's all there is to it. Those should not be prerequisites because medical schools will not accept prerequisites from foreign institutions, and because that they are a little more flexible, you may be able to request the either foreign transcript or transcript exemption. So that is something that will need to be parsed out for your individual situation, and you'll need to take a look at the videos from AMC to see where you stand in that. Now, there's a middle ground that gets a little confusing because it may be a study abroad program, but through another institution in the States. The example I like to use is I know there's a Boston college program that goes, that some of my students have done a study abroad with. Well, they need to get a Boston college transcript because that's where the credit transferred back to. So they're still study abroad, they're still maybe going to University of Barcelona, but it's going to be issued on a transcript of higher education from Boston, so that's what they need to get. There are similar instances with like the DIS Copenhagen exchanges, so they're a little bit trickier, but some of these videos from AMC should help walk you through it. I know that there are sometimes the study abroad, the TREQ classes. That's the prefix, that's the course. You put it in exactly as it appears on the transcript. Here are the resources I was talking about from AAMC on coursework entry. Now we're to another section called the work and activities. You're able to list a maximum of 15 entries. It's your opportunity to share with medical schools all of your work experiences. Out of those 15, you are able to choose 3 as the most meaningful, where you'll provide an additional you will be provided an additional prompt and asked to reflect on the experience a bit more. You can include repeated experiences, so instead of entering a summer job like 3 times, you would enter it once and indicate those repeated date ranges. You can enter up to 4 separate date ranges for a single experience, and you can also enter future dates up to the start of your potential matriculation. So if you're planning on a gap year and you've got a July start date already hammered out, you're able to put that in your application. Now remember what I say, it's not always going to be weighed as heavily as things that are already done. So that's why things you're doing post application should only be building on already established activities and not I've done 2 things and I'm going to wait and do this 3rd one during my gap year, because they're not guaranteed to weigh that as heavily. And there are some schools like UNC that will not accept updates during the application process. So if you're not done with it, at best by your primaries and secondaries, at worst by your interviews, then they're not going to know you've done it until a potential reapplication. So here's kind of the basic format of the entry. It is very just descriptive, exposition, resume format, whatever you like to say. It's the bare bones. This is what I did, and this is where I was, and this is who I interacted with. Now, if you wanted to do the most meaningful, you're going to describe how you feel about this experience. When writing your response, you might want to consider the transformative nature, the impact you made while engaging, and the personal growth you experienced. My personal philosophy is that they should be 3 very different things. It doesn't make sense to have your 3 most important things be research if ECU is still one of your top choices in schools. It doesn't make sense for only patient contact to be your experiences for most meaningful if you want to keep Duke or Wake on your radar. You should have 3 things very important to you that help give a full picture of the disparate aspects of your personality and the varying experiences that comprise a well-balanced candidate. So here are some of the differences. 700 characters for any of the general experiences. Define the organization, exact positions, more resume-like, to the point. Here it says can use bullets. I don't know why that's in there because you're not able to use formatting in there. I think by bullets they mean sentence fragments. We're okay with sentence fragments. There's not a lot of room for creativity, but once you click most meaningful, you're up to 1,325 characters. It's a much more thoughtful reflection. How was this transformative? How did it change you? Why does this experience make you want to be a doctor? Why has this affirmed your decision? Most importantly, you should have a voice. So when you click yes on most meaningful, here is an example of something that is a bit more narrative, and I'll give you half a second to read it. Oh wait, I don't have to because you can pause this thing. So now we're to the letters of evaluation portion. This is where you enter contact information about who will be submitting letters of eval on your behalf. UNC does not do committee letters. UNC does not do a letter packet. You are only able to gather individual letters. Now, if you want to sunny side up this, glass half full, then you are essentially able to pick your de facto committee. You are able to choose who you know well and who you think will be able to write a strong letter of evaluation for you. Now, I'm going to give you the breakdown of what I have seen work really well in the past. This is not 100% boilerplate, but I think if you have these 5 in mind, you will be well on your way to sitting pretty with the letters of evaluation that are going to be needed by 98% of the medical schools. General rule of thumb is at least 2 hard science, 1 non-science/humanities, 1 physician's letter, generally someone that you've shadowed, and one personal reference. A lot of people will use a work supervisor for that. Now, your PI, if you have significant research, needs to be one of those letters, but there's some flexibility in where they go. If it was a job through RTP, then maybe that's your personal reference. If it was a biochem or neurology lab, then maybe that's one of your hard science. If it's your social science or EXSS, your psych or your EXSS lab, then maybe it's a non-science or a major professor. There's a little bit of flexibility in there, but if you have significant research, your PI needs to be one of the letters. AMCAS does not have requirements on letters, but schools may. The general rule of thumb is it needs to be signed and it should probably be on letterhead. There are resources on the pre-health website under the Letters of Evaluation tab that has resources for students and faculty. I have mentioned matching forms a couple of times in this presentation so far. Transcript matching forms, letter request forms. This is what they look like. It is essentially a unique identifier with your AMCAS ID and a letter ID and a barcode attached to it, because maybe there are 27 Alex Monacos. You never know. And this is going to be able to match that letter to that ID to that person. And this is a little bit of a diagram for how it works. You request it, it goes to the letter author, you submit your information to AMCAS, it sends it to them, they send it to AMCAS, and then it's able to go to the medical schools. Several of you have, we've discussed Interfolio, and that is a resource that is available to UNC students. It is linked on the pre-health website under the Letters of Evaluation tab. It is an online repository where, as long as you set up an account and pay the yearly subscription fee, it will hold the letters digitally until you are ready to submit them, and it is an approved distributor for AMCAS. So in the medical school section, you will select the schools to which you are applying. You are able to list separate programs, separate degree types within your application. What you're not able to do is list different degree programs within the same institution. For instance, if you wanted to do UNC's MD PhD combined program, that's how you would list it, but maybe you want the Duke regular MD. What you could not do is, I want to apply to UNC's MD PhD and regular MD program. You'll also complete the essay section, also known as the personal statement. For AMCAS, it is 5,300 characters, which is about a little over 1 page, single-spaced, and that is characters, not words, so that includes all your punctuation. This is to reflect on why you wish to attend medical school. There are some help resources on that page for suggestions on what to think about. You need to type directly into this field and avoid copying and pasting, because formatting issues can occur. It will not handle text rich, it will not handle bullets or italics or any of that jazz. For those applying to an MD PhD program, you will also be required to complete 2 additional essays, one on your motivations for pursuing an MD PhD and one detailing your research experiences. Here is what they look like. This is not necessarily what marries you to your field of research entering in medical school, but it gives them an idea of what you have done and keeps them in compliance with NIH reporting requirements. Some common props for the med personal statement. This is something to think about but not necessarily state, is what can medicine offer that other professions do not? For instance, you can help people by being a teacher or a social worker. What draws you specifically to medicine? Make it creative, unique, and reflective of you. Remember that the personal statement is the main representation of your personality in your entire application, at least until you get an interview. It's the hook that hopefully gets you an interview. So you should really convey your passion about medicine. Get feedback from multiple perspectives, write it early and often, and read lots of examples of personal essays before you start. Here are some resources to use. A couple of these are available in the UCS resource room where students come for drop-ins every day 1 to 4. Anytime that room is open during that 1 to 4 window, you can come take a look at these. Also, the Writing Center is going to be a wonderful resource. They have trained professionals who will read personal statements and give you feedback on making sure you have a cogent point. Finally, the last section of the application is the standardized test section. MCAT scores are automatically released to AMCAS. So if you have already received your score, you should verify that it is captured correctly in your application. You can submit your AMCAS application without MCAT scores, but you should indicate your intended future MCAT testing date and keep that information updated throughout the application process. This is especially important if you already have an MCAT score in your application, because if you don't let them know they have another one planned, you will be assessed on the only one that is evident to them. Medical schools will have no other way of knowing that you intend to take an additional MCAT if you don't indicate that you plan to. Here's a little bit about how the MCAT scores look when we as advisors and medical schools view them. I think this is a copy of what your report looks like as well. It's the score, it's the confidence band, plus or minus 1 on either side, the percentile rank, and then the score profile. There's more information on those testings on aamc.org/MCAT. Here's the score breakdown. If you have multiple test settings, confidence bands will appear in the AMCAS section. And then if anybody is still affected, I think this is the last cycle where the prior MCAT will even be considered. If anybody does have an old MCAT score, they will now be included with confidence bands and percentile ranks, and they will be listed in reverse chronological order. In order to submit your application, you are required to indicate agreement to the certification statement. This is also where you will be sure to pay the fees or the nominal fee left over after whatever fee is such a program. This is just another little bubble on the verification process from when you submit to when the transcripts are received. Then you move to the verification queue. From the ready to review can take up to 6 weeks. So always be sure to factor in the processing time. Here are some graphs of the processing time for the last couple of cycles. They have, God love them, made great strides in reducing the processing time. I think it was the 2015 cycle where I saw processing times as long as 8 to 9 weeks. So they're back down to about 3 weeks at max for some of these processing times. So now after submission, we're going to talk about some of the things that you can go back and change if necessary. Criminal background checks and multiple accept data. Only these items can be updated or changed in your application after it has been submitted. ID numbers, name, contact information, date of birth for whatever reason, I have no idea, letters of eval. One note about letters of eval. You are not able to delete letters of eval once the information has put in. If you're not up to your full 10, you can add more letters, but you cannot go back in and delete anybody. What you can do is put a notification that that letter is no longer expected to be received, and that allows them to process your file without it. So if you've got somebody who's hanging and hasn't sent their letter and you can't get in touch with them and you don't think they're going to send it in and you want your file to go ahead and process, just mark that letter as no longer expected to be received and they will process without it. You can also add more medical schools. Now there is a batch fee, I think, for lack of a better term. Once you click submit with the initial set of schools and it is processed, you can add more after that. However, they will charge you a fee for the privilege of adding those additional schools. So if you are going to add schools in batches, I would make them as few and far between as possible, because you will have to pay another fee every time you want to pay more fees. Woof. Okay, you can also go back in and release your application information to me, the school designated pre-health advisor. Criminal background checks. Participating schools have checks run on accepted or waitlisted applicants. This is a breakdown of some of the timetables. Now, you are supposed to list whether you have been charged or convicted, I believe is the wording in recent cycles. I am not a lawyer. I'm not giving you legal advice. I can say in the past that students who have made a mistake and learned from it and expressed sincere remorse and growth as part of it, it has not been hugely detrimental to an application. In my experience, it has always been better to disclose and talk to them sincerely about what you learned from it, rather than marking that nothing happened and you were fine and they get a criminal background report check that says, hey, so and so had this instance on this date that was then expunged, and then they have to go hunt the details from you. That doesn't make anybody look above board. So read through the information on the criminal background check. If you need to, work with Carolina Legal Services to figure out exactly what that's going to look like for your record. Hopefully that's few, if any, of you. Remember that medical schools cannot view the number or names of other schools that you have applied to. They have no right to know who else you're applying to, particularly very early in the cycle. And I will pick fights with people if they try and ask you that. I don't appreciate it. But they do like to do that so they can help dial in their acceptance numbers. They only know about multiple accept data within February or March of any individual application cycle, when they let schools who have students with multiple acceptances know. That's when they can start dialing in their acceptance numbers. And then traffic rules open up in April so that everybody knows who has a current matriculated action or multiple acceptances. You need to be very thoughtful and purposeful in your school selections because it can get very pricey. The general application is, of course, $160. It's $39 for every school after that. So if the average of 15 schools holds true in this cycle as it has in recent ones, that's the $160 plus 39 times 14, because remember, you have one school included in the primary. That's $700 something. Secondary applications, be warned, there are some programs that will automatically issue a secondary, meaning the minute your primary hits the system, they computer generate an application and spit it back to you because they will take your $90. If you do that with the same 15 schools, that's over $2,000. So any schools you are going to apply to, you need to be certain that it's not just, hey, I'm trying to find a school that will take me. You really need to ask yourself where you are going to be happy and where you are going to fit for the 4 years of your medical curriculum. So it needs to be a school you would 100% say yes to if they were to offer an acceptance. There are some resources available to students. I'm sorry, this should have been updated to the 2018. It is the 2018 Fee Assistance Program. AAMC believes that the cost of applying to medical school should not be a barrier to those who are interested in becoming physicians. So if you are interested, here is some more information. You are eligible for reduced MCAT registration fees, MCAT prep materials, free access to the MSAR, medical school admissions requirements, the AMCAS fee waiver, and a discounted access to Pivio, which is, I think, essentially an e-portfolio for something that becomes much more important once you get to the residency phase of the process. You are eligible if you are a U.S. citizen or U.S. national, lawful permanent resident, or refugee asylum, or DACA. Your award approval is tied directly to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services poverty level guidelines. If you make 300% or less than that, I think it is now the 2016 national poverty level for each family size. The dates are not retroactive. Like if you've already taken the MCAT, you can't apply and get that money refunded to you. But if you apply and then decide to hold off on an application, it is valid for up to 2 calendar years. They have a new, more user-friendly application, and here are some more website information resources for you to check out. Avoid delays in your application. You do not get to click submit and forget about it. So begin as soon as you can and keep up to date with it. Make sure your contact information is up to date so that they can notify if anything is missing. Be aware of all of your deadlines and submit well ahead of time. Enter all of your coursework exactly as appears on your transcript, and be sure all fields are complete. Beat your transcript deadlines. Send your transcript requests as soon as you begin the application. Make sure that you keep on top of your letters of evaluation, because getting faculty members to submit things on your timetables can feel a little like herding cats. Here are some additional resources. YouTube channel for AMCAS, AMCAS Twitter. I really do like the Facebook page that AMC does. They have some great resources and some timely postings for each phase of the process. What everybody seems to be freaking out about in any given week, they have something set to it, and some additional resources. And then, most of all, you've got the pre-health website. So if you haven't taken a look at that, here's where it is. And this is hopefully where this document will live on the other side. Hopefully I've been able to provide some information to help get you through the gist of your AMCAS. Remember, if you have specific questions, you are welcome to email me. I won't review an AMCAS application in totality, but I will spitball some ideas, kind of do a strengths merit of, do I talk about this versus this? How might I frame this? And those can all be done hopefully by email, if not by student appointments. And remember that I am here all summer. Thank you very much. This has been Risa Brinkley narrating your presentation.